A man discovers a portal into the mind of a famous actor. Hey, it's that bit here. Today I'm going to tell you about a movie from 1999 called Being John Malkovich. Watch out, as spoilers are ahead. And be well. At the start, we see a stage show of a sad puppet man gracefully dancing around a bedroom. The puppet man is controlled by a man called Craig Schwartz. The next day Craig awakens in his bed with a talking parrot on his head, where he is then asked a number of questions by his wife, who is called Lottie. She asks if he has considered looking for work outside of puppeteering. His wife leaves for work, and asks him to take care of Elijah, who we then discover is a chimp living in the apartment. We then see Craig in the street doing his puppet show. A small child asks her dad if she can watch the puppet show. Craig is not aware that there is anyone watching. There is a part in the show where the puppets are seen to be doing graphic body movements. At that moment her father turns around and sees the lewd act the puppets are doing in front of his daughter. The girl's father then punches Craig in the face. The next day Craig starts looking for work, and sees an opening in an office job for someone with fast hands. The company his interview is with, is on the 7th floor of a building. He's then met by a secretary. She calls Craig to the job interview, as a group of old people enter the waiting room. He then enters Dr. Lester's office, who gives Craig a series of easy tasks. After Craig completes them, he offers him the job. Craig inquires of how old Dr. Lester is. Dr. Lester confesses he is 105 years old. Craig tells the pretty woman he does not know her name, and if he can guess it in 3 tries she has to go out for a drink with him that night. The pretty woman agrees. Craig proceeds to mouth the start of a few vowels in a row, and eventually based on the pretty woman's facial expressions guesses right at Maxine. She agrees to go for a drink with Craig. Craig arrives at the bar Maxine is in, and he tries to talk to Maxine. Maxine then asks Craig to tell her about himself. Craig tells her he is a puppeteer. On hearing this, Maxine asks for the check to signal the date is over. He is then in the office filing, when he drops a file behind a cupboard. When he moves the cupboard to retrieve it, he finds a small door. Behind the door is a tunnel. Curiosity gets the better of Craig, and he crawls down the tunnel. He is then transported down the tunnel and then inside the head of a person. He sees through the person's eyes. He looks up in the mirror and sees he is John Malkovich, a famous movie star. John gets the bellboy of the apartment he lives in to hail a cab for him. At that moment Craig is dragged backwards out of John Malkovich's head. He then falls from the sky and lands at the side of a freeway. Craig then makes his way back to the office, and bursts into the room where Maxine is having her telephone conversation. Craig then frantically tells her of what just happened to him. Maxine is unimpressed and leaves. It is later and Craig is in his apartment when the phone rings. It is Maxine. She persuades Craig to use it as a business venture, and charge people to go in the head of John Malkovich. Craig is seen walking with Lottie, and tells her of his venture, and of the portal in the office. Craig agrees to let her use the portal to prove it is real. She goes down the portal and into the head of John Malkovich for 15 minutes. Craig is waiting at the side of the freeway. Lottie falls from the sky the same way he did. The next day Craig and Lottie are at dinner at Dr. Lester's house. Lottie asks Dr. Lester if she can use the bathroom. When she goes upstairs, she gets the wrong room, and ends up in a room that is full of pictures of John Malkovich. The next day Craig is in the office with Maxine, when Lottie enters. She tells Craig she wants to use the Malkovich portal again. When Craig goes off to the portal with Lottie, Maxine calls a friend and asks him to get her John Malkovich's home phone number. Lottie is inside the head of John who is practicing lines for a play. When his phone rings, it is Maxine. She then makes advances and asks John to meet her in a nearby restaurant at 8 p.m. John is waiting in the restaurant for Maxine. Lottie feels herself becoming attracted to Maxine. Lottie then asks Craig to invite Maxine around to their apartment, as a gesture for starting the Malkovich portal business. Maxine visits Craig and Lottie's apartment. Later they sit on the couch to smoke a joint, when Craig and Lottie attack Maxine trying to kiss her. Maxine pushes them both away and tells Lottie she likes being with her, but only when she is inside the head of John Malkovich. Maxine gets a phone call from Lottie, who tells her she wants to meet her tonight at 8 p.m. inside John's head. Maxine waits till the clock strikes 8 p.m. At that moment Maxine gets on top of John and becomes intimate with him. Lottie is watching through John's eyes as the events unfold. Maxine accidentally calls him Lottie, and John asks her why did she call him that? Maxine explains it's something she likes to call men sometimes. They finish being intimate with each other and Lottie falls from the sky near the freeway in the grass nearby. The next day Craig confronts Maxine and tells her he loves her. Maxine tells him she doesn't love him. This infuriates Craig and he runs off out the office and all the way back to his apartment. When Lottie arrives at the apartment, Craig jumps out from underneath the table and lunges at her with a gun, and forces her to ring Maxine, telling her she wants to meet her tonight. Maxine agrees. Craig then ties Lottie up and locks her in the chimp's cage with the chimp. John is in the theater rehearsing the play when Maxine turns up, and goes into the dressing room with Maxine where they both become intimate with each other. Craig has gone through the portal and is inside John. He realizes he can control John just like his puppet. He makes John's hand move and makes him say what Craig is thinking. John realizes something strange is happening and becomes panicked and leaves the dressing room. John is panicked walking around a friend's apartment. His friend is Charlie Sheen, another famous actor. He tells Charlie that his hand moved against his will, and he said a few words that were not his own. He tells Charlie he has to know the truth and leaves Charlie's apartment. John is then seen sitting in a car outside Maxine's apartment. John then follows her to the 7th floor. He follows the people down the hall. A fight breaks out and Craig rushes out to calm everything down. He notices it is John in amongst the people. John demands to know what is happening. Craig tells John that they offer a service, where people can be inside of John Malkovich for 15 minutes. John tells Craig he wants to go through the portal. Craig opens the door, and John goes down the portal. John is transported into himself sitting in a restaurant. When he looks up he sees a woman with his head on her body. When he looks around the restaurant everybody is him, and the only words they say is John's surname, Malkovich. John yells out, but can only shout the word Malkovich. This sends John into a panic and he runs out the restaurant. He then falls from the sky by the freeway. John tells Craig no man should see what he saw and the portal must be sealed shut. Craig explains that he discovered the portal which is his livelihood and he can't seal the portal. John explains that it is his head people are going into without his permission and tells Craig he will see him in court. Craig calls Maxine and makes Lottie plan to meet her in John's body. He then tapes up Lottie's mouth and leaves the apartment. The chimp sees Lottie trying to untie herself, and has a flashback from when he was captured in the jungle by poachers. It is not explained how Lottie gets the chimp, but she must have rescued the chimp from the poachers somehow. After the flashback the chimp remembers how to untie ropes. The chimp unties Lottie and they embrace in a hug. Maxine receives a phone call. It is Lottie. She is out of the cage and untying her feet. Lottie explains to Maxine it was Craig who was in John's body, as she has been locked in a cage. Lottie tells Maxine that Craig can control John like a puppet. Maxine tells Lottie she is impressed by Craig's actions, and tells Lottie they must go their separate ways. Maxine knocks at John's and tells him she can explain about the portal. John opens the door, and Maxine asks John is Craig inside him. Craig then controls John's body, and starts speaking to Maxine through John. Maxine then asks Craig to be intimate with her. John tries to fight his way back into his body, but Craig overpowers him. Lottie is seen in a taxi, and is taken to Dr. Lester's. She then confesses to Dr. Lester that she has an unhealthy obsession with John Malkovich. She then confesses she wandered into the room with lots of pictures of John Malkovich in, and thought Dr. Lester must have the same problem. He tells her the truth about the portal. He tells her that his real name is Captain Merton, and 90 years ago he found a strange portal that led to a vessel body, and he found out he could leap from vessel to vessel and live forever. He tells her that he has to go through the portal to John by his 44th birthday, at exactly midnight, or he will be transported to the next infant body. He explains that is a bad thing, as you are trapped in the new host's brain, with no control of the host's body, forever doomed to watch the world through someone else's eyes. He then tells Lottie to meet his friends, as he has offered to take a number of people along for the ride. Craig tells Maxine he could use John's notoriety to launch his puppet career. Maxine is impressed and they embrace. Lottie is still with Captain Merton and his friends. They are impressed with Lottie and offer her a place to go inside John Malkovich with them. She then tells Captain Merton she has something to tell him about the John Malkovich vessel. Craig and Maxine go over to John's agent's office, and tell John's agent that John is not going to be acting anymore, and is now a puppeteer. It is now 8 months into the future. Maxine is pregnant, putting up a hanging fixture above a crib, while Craig shouts her from the living room to watch what is on the television. It is a documentary on Craig, who is now a world-famous puppeteer. The documentary describes how John and Maxine's marriage is in turmoil. Maxine is looking sad, staring at one of Craig's original puppets, which is a replica of Lottie. Craig then tells her he must attend an ABC television network benefit, but he will see her later. At the benefit, he is doing a puppet show for an opera. Craig makes his way back to the apartment to see that Maxine isn't there and the place is in a bit of a mess. Then the phone rings and Craig hears a man's voice telling him that they have captured Maxine. Craig pleads for Maxine to come to no harm. The caller then tells Craig he must leave the body of John Malkovich by midnight. Craig then tells the man he doesn't know if he can, because without John's body he will have no money. The man asks Craig what's wrong with him, as they will kill his wife if he doesn't. Craig then hangs up the phone. Captain Merton is holding a phone with a dead ringtone, and tells all the old people and Lottie that he has ended the call and it might be the end for them all. Lottie looks at Maxine and walks over to her, and produces a gun. Maxine flees down the portal, and Lottie goes in after her. The two women are then transported into John's subconscious. A chase ensues. Lottie is shooting at Maxine throughout the chase. Maxine ends up hiding, and jumps out at Lottie, at which point they both fall from the sky and end up in the grass by the freeway. Lottie has dropped the gun, and before she can get to it, Maxine picks it up and points it at Lottie. Maxine then tells Lottie that the baby Maxine is carrying is Lottie's child, as she was in John's body when John and Maxine conceived the child. Craig is in a bar drinking heavily and depressed that his wife will be killed if he doesn't leave John's body. Someone asks him if he is John Malkovich. Craig becomes enraged and tries to grab the man, who drags Craig onto his back and punches him. Craig is then seen looking at his injuries in the mirror. Captain Merton receives a phone call. It is Craig. He is crying on the phone and tells Captain Merton he will leave John. Captain Merton makes Craig leave John on the phone. Craig does this and John collapses on the ground. Captain Merton tells all of his friends, it is time to go through the portal. Craig is then seen falling from the sky to the grass by the freeway. John eventually wakes up in his own body and sees himself in the mirror for the first time. He starts to celebrate. At that moment, Captain Merton's friends go down the portal one by one, and John starts to spasm as each person enters his body. Captain Merton is the last to go through the portal. He enters John's body and exclaims they are now all Malkovich. Craig gets up from the grass and sees Lottie and Maxine kissing. Craig rushes over to them shouting Maxine's name. Maxine and Lottie both shout at Craig and get into a car that drives away from him. Craig is left on the side of the freeway crying and shouting after Maxine that he loves her. It is 7 years into the future and John's friend Charlie is knocking at John's house. Charlie is bald with a comb over. When John answers the door, he has a full head of hair, and is now in a relationship with Flores. John invites Charlie upstairs and tells Charlie there is a way in which he can live forever. He tells Charlie that the pictures on the wall are of a little girl called Emily. Emily is seen with Maxine and Lottie at a water park. Craig is heard crying inside Emily's head, saying how he loves Maxine. He has been transported inside Emily's head, and is locked inside Emily's subconscious. It is not explained how this happened, but he must have tried to go through the portal after John's portal closed, and was then trapped inside Emily's head, not being able to move, forever doomed to watch the world through Emily's eyes. If you want more videos like this, then subscribe, leave a like to help the channel out, and turn on the notification. Thank you for viewing.